known as Bhakti Rasamrita Swami. It is said that for the saintly, the entire world is their home. Everybody belongs to them. And for that reason, they are beyond sectarian identifications of geography and demography. So it is this noble realization which His Holiness humbly represents. His Holiness was born in India in the year 1962 to pious Indian parents. He graduated in engineering, Bachelor's of Engineering, and also has an MBA in business from Bombay University. In the mid 80s, His Holiness came into contact with the teachings of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, commonly known as ISKCON, or the Hare Krishnas. And he decided to dedicate his entire life preaching the timeless teachings of Bhagavad Gita around the world. So for the last 30 years, Swamiji has been traveling around the world, sharing wisdom from the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic texts. And he has taken upon himself to contribute towards the spiritual rejuvenation of the people of this world. So may I request all of you to join your hands to welcome him warmly once.
Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yudapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Satvaitam Savadutam Parijana Savitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Shri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. A very good evening to everyone. I'm very happy to be with all of you this evening. Thank you so much for coming. I'm surprised to see such a beautiful shop of crystal. I never imagined there would be so many people coming for crystals and gems and so on. Very interesting. I was going around taking a look at all the crystals and gems on display, and it's definitely something quite fascinating, and I can understand why you are here. Actually, the world is a fascinating place, a bewildering place actually. There's so much to learn from this world. There's so much of mystery that pertains to life on this planet. Everything has a purpose. You know, nothing is without purpose. And it's only because of some kind of modern day ideology that is prevalent that everything comes by chance. But that's not a fact. Everything happens by design. Even if you look at these beautiful crystals, they may be results of natural formations in the earth, and you can have geological explanations, I'm sure. A geologist will be able to explain to us why these crystals appeared in the way they did. But that still doesn't explain how these crystals can have effects. Please do come in. Please make yourself comfortable. But geologists cannot explain why these crystals have the kind of impact or effect they do, not only on the physical body, but even on the subtle aspects of our existence. You know, according to the Bhagavad Gita, the ancient Sanskrit text from India, one of the most well-known spiritual texts the world has ever known, one can arguably say, there is a description of three types of bodies. One is the gross body that we have, flesh, blood, bones. It's the body that we see in the mirror every day. It's a body that we are so familiar with, that we clean, we dress, we decorate. That's the gross body. We feed, we rest it. There is also another body. It's called the subtle body. The subtle body is not something we can see with the physical eye, although on very rare occasions in special cases, perhaps it may become visible to some people who have some kind of an extra ability. Not necessarily a good thing to have that ability, but some people may be able to see the subtle body, the aura. There is such a thing as an aura, you know. And the subtle body consists of the mind, the intelligence, and the false ego. The mind is a repository of our desires and our thoughts from time immemorial. Everything we have experienced in life, in this life, as well as in the previous lives, and we don't know how many lives we've been here in this world, could be trillions and trillions of lives. And everything that we have experienced is imprinted upon our consciousness. Inasmuch as sometimes when you walk on let's say, wet sand, you leave the imprints of your feet on that. It forms a mark. Or let's say you have wet cement and you place your palm there and lift it up. After a while, when the cement hardens, then that imprint remains there. So there are imprints on our consciousness. And the imprints happen because of our karma. Karma, very basically speaking, means activity. You see, at every moment in life, we perform activity. There's never a moment when we can't perform any activity. We don't. It's not possible. Not performing an activity is also an activity, you know. Someone may say, I'm just sleeping, but sleeping is an activity. So every activity, or even abstinence from any activity, is a kind of an activity that generates an impression. In Sanskrit, this is called a samskar. And this sanskar, once imprinted upon the consciousness, then has an effect. It is a subtle thing that impels us, that induces us, that provokes us to act and think in certain ways. Our dreams are made of this. For example, you may see in your dream a golden mountain. Now, there's no mountain of gold. Even in Ballarat, when the people came, there was gold, maybe in a few streams, or maybe in the soil somewhere, but nobody ever saw a mountain of gold, but you see it in your dream. What does that mean? It means that you've seen gold and you've also seen a mountain. And what your mind has done is, in its dream state, it's mixed up the two, and you have a mountain of gold. So these impressions remain there, and they come out not only in the form of dreams, but also in the form of your propensities, your tendencies, your mentalities, your interests in life, your nature. Someone has one kind of a nature, another person has another kind of a nature. Why? It's because we have performed certain karma in the past. We have those samskaras, those impressions from the past upon our psyche. And they induce us to act in certain ways, think in certain ways. Let's say although it's not a very pleasant example, but it's illustrative. Let's say there's a thief, and let's say it's the first time he ever stole something, for argument's sake. He steals it, and then the impression is created. Now, there's two reactions that come out of that karma. One is the gross reaction. He gets caught, he's put in jail. That's the immediate reaction, the reaction to that karma. But there's another subtle reaction that happens, which is not so easily visible. And that is because of this act of stealing, that has created an impression in that person's consciousness. And that impression will impel that person to steal again. Or rather, should we say, it will lower his disinclination to steal again. And he thinks, well, I've stolen once and I got punished for it. It's not good to steal, but that tendency has come. And when it becomes strong again, he steals again. And the more he steals, every time he steals, that impression becomes stronger and stronger. It becomes reinforced till he becomes an incorrigible thief. Helpless. He can't avoid stealing. Some people are, helpless stealers. They steal because they have a habit. It's much like being an addict to something, and you just helplessly do it. It reminds me of a little story that our guru used to say about a thief who wanted to reform. He said, I've done so many bad karmas, I should try to change the way I was. So he went to a group of pilgrims who were going on a pilgrimage from holy place to holy place, and there were spiritual talks. And he was really feeling purified and happy because of the company of these holy people. And they stopped at a place at night to rest. And there was one room like this, and they were all sleeping in that room. They had their beddings all over like that. Now this thief was thinking, just look at that, this bag here, there's something nice here, there's something there. And then he was thinking, I've come to a company of holy people, I shouldn't steal. It's not good. I've come here to reform myself. So he restrained himself. But because he had been a habitual thief, it was very difficult to restrain his tendency to steal. Finally, in the middle of the night, he woke up and said, I have to do something. He interchanged everybody's bag. He had to lift up somebody's bag. So he just interchanged it. And then in the morning, there was havoc because everybody woke up and said, where's my bag? Where's my bag? How come my bag is with you? And in the commotion, then he stood up and said, I'm sorry, it's me. And this is the history. So this is the nature of these impressions. They impel us to do certain things. And that's what creates our personality. Our personality is nothing but the resultant of all the impressions that have been imprinted on our mind from time immemorial. And they surface in a particular kind of a gross body that we have. And they manifest according to the gross body. The same impressions in a dog's body or in a germ's body or in a human body will act differently. So we have these two bodies, the gross body and the subtle body. So this is the mind, which is one part of the subtle body. The other part of the subtle body is the intelligence. The intelligence is that faculty or that part of the subtle body which is responsible for discriminating, for analyzing, for making choices. I should do this, I should not do that. The mind simply desires. Mind accepts and rejects. I like it, I want it. The intelligence says, no, you're not supposed to steal. Even the thief has that intelligence. Intelligence tells him, look, you'll get caught again. It's not good for you. But the mind is more powerful. The impressions caused by repeated stealing for that thief has become so strong, it overpowers the intelligence of that person. So even though his analysis and discrimination tells him it's not right, I shouldn't do it, but because he becomes helpless, the mind has overtaken the intelligence. The Upanishads, which are spiritual texts again, which are more philosophical in nature, they give us a very beautiful analogy of a chariot. A chariot that's driven by 5 horses. And there are reins, there's a chariot driver, there is a chariot, and there is a passenger in the chariot. Now, the chariot itself represents the gross body. The horses represent the senses that we have, the sense of sight, the sense of hearing, the sense of smell, the sense of taste, and the sense of touch. Now, these 5 senses are forever drawing us here and there. The eyes like to see beautiful form, the ears like to hear pleasant sounds, the sense of smell wants to engage in fragrance, the sense of taste, the tongue wants to taste delicious foods, and similarly a sense of touch also wants to be suitably engaged. So these senses, which are extensions of the mind, so to speak, are constantly hovering here and there looking for gratification. So our whole life is geared around the mind-senses combination. And in order to fulfill the desires of the mind that is fed information by the senses, the intelligence works overtime. So intelligence decides, how do I fulfill this particular desire or that particular desire? So the intelligence is represented by the chariot driver who holds the reins of the chariot, and the reins represent the mind. But you see, beyond the gross body and the subtle body, there's also another thing, and that is the soul, which is the topic for today. The soul is something completely distinct from the body, gross or subtle. It is spiritual. The gross body and the subtle body are material. The subtle body is subtle but still material. Even though we can't see it, we can't touch it, we can't feel it, but we know that it exists. We can't see the mind, but we know it exists because we feel, we have emotions. Therefore, that's proof that the mind exists. We can discriminate, we can analyze. Therefore, we can understand the intelligence exists, even though we can't see it. Modern scientists think of the intelligence in mind as the brain. That's not so. The mind and the intelligence are subtle. They use the human brain as an instrument to act. You know, even a dead body has a brain, isn't it? But it doesn't act. A dead body has eyes, ears, the tongue, the body, the skin, everything's there. It doesn't act, it doesn't feel, it doesn't talk. Why not? Because there's no subtle body in it any longer. And why is the subtle body not there? Because the soul is not there anymore. The soul has departed from the gross body. When the gross body becomes unfit for habitation for the soul leaves the body. Let's say there's a person living in a house, and the house is damaged due to a hurricane or a typhoon or something like that. Then the person moves on to another house because this house is no longer fit to be lived in. Similarly, this body has a temporary duration. Forms made of matter have a very short duration of existence. So when this body grows old, or it is destroyed due to some other reason like an accident or something like that, then the soul no longer is able to live within that body. So it leaves the body. That's what we call death. Death is merely the departure of the soul from the body, permanently, that's all. And I use the word permanently very consciously, because the soul does leave the body at different times but returns to the body, even in dreams. For example, we're here in Melbourne. You may dream that you were in Sydney. Your mind has departed, and it may come back. The subtle realm operates in a different platform altogether. we cannot compare the functioning of the subtle body with the gross body. For the gross body to move from here to Sydney, you got to take a flight or you drive down. It's time consuming. But the mind can move very fast. And the soul even more so. And there are other situations when the mind can move and the soul moves with it above. And the best example I can give you of this is out-of-body experiences. And there are also near-death experiences. And I remember one lady, she was training to be a cardiothoracic surgeon. You know, they do these heart surgeries. And that was the time I was associated with a particular hospital where we were trying to do some spiritual care programs. And so I was telling the doctors there, you know, you should do some research and talk about near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences. And then you will be able to establish to the scientific world that there is something called the soul. Because modern-day science is not going to accept it unless they can see it through the telescope or microscope, or, you know, prove it in a laboratory, or prove it by some mathematical equation or something like that. But these phenomena are far beyond that. They transcend our scientific and material methodologies. So how are we going to prove it to them? So let's do some experimentation. You operated so many critical patients many times, you know, who were in trauma, maybe because of an accident or something like that, or a heart attack. And many of them, I'm sure, will have these out-of-body or near-death experiences. You document them and present them in scientific journals, in medical journals. And eventually, when the volume of evidence becomes so strong, people are going to sit up and take notice. And they're not going to ridicule this idea as being something, just paranormal. It's going to be normal. Now it's called paranormal because it's not within the normal range of our perception. So we think it's something unscientific, it's irrational or something like that. And this lady met me the next week, and she was calling up something. I want to meet. So I thought, yeah, what's the matter? She said, that the day after I left, the very next day, I encountered this patient who was a lady from a village. She was uneducated, illiterate lady, and she had an open heart surgery. And when she came to, because I was the junior doctor, the seniors all left after the surgery, and I was to do the follow-up and looking after the post-operative care of the patient. And this lady, she came to external consciousness after quite a while, and she began to describe to me in her native tongue, which I understood, she said, everything that was going on in the operating theater, in her own little way. Because she didn't understand the terminologies, but how many people there were, what was going on. And initially she didn't believe it. And then she investigated, she questioned her deeply, cross-checked to make sure that there was no hanky-panky going on. And she became convinced that this lady has actually had an out-of-body experience. She's actually moved up above her body, and from a vantage point above the body, she has actually seen her body, her gross body being operated. And she was so excited, she rushed to the head of the department of whatever that department, cardiac surgery. And the moment, she was also a lady, she hushed her up. She told her, just get on with your work, this is not our business. We're doctors here. This is not our thing to get into all these paranormal things. Don't get into this. And because she had to finish her degree, she wanted that certificate. She had to just forget this whole episode. But she never forgot it. Even years later when I met her, she remembered that. And it had a deep impression on her mind because she realized that this is a fact. There is such a thing as a subtle body. There is such a thing, something that is distinct from the gross body. And then she started doing, well, now she's in America, I think. She settled somewhere in America, and I hope she continues with her efforts. So the point is that in these near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences, who is it, or what is it that experiences the gross body or sees it from another vantage point? And we can't dismiss it as a hallucination because it's factual. Hallucinations are not factual by definition. So if that patient was hallucinating, he or she would have seen something that was not true. But this patient was actually describing what had happened there in that operating theater. And there are numerous such incidents like this that indicate that there is a subtle entity over and above the gross body, but still is material. It's the subtle body. And then the subtle body once again re-enters the body. It's like, some kind of elastic or rubber band or something. You stretch it, and then you stretch it back, it fits in once again. So the subtle body goes. But up to a point, if something happens that disconnects the soul from the subtle body from the body, gross body, then that's death. But so long as there is opportunity for the subtle body to re-enter into the gross body, the person is still alive. And the medical parameters, the EEG or whatever it is, that will continue to beep and it will move. So this indicates very clearly that there is this subtle body existing. Also, there's the instance of past life memories. People do remember their past lives. I met a person one time, I was giving a lecture on the Bhagavad Gita, and the topic was reincarnation. And he came up to me later and said, I found your lecture very boring. So I said, I'm sorry, I'll try to make it more interesting next time. Maybe I'll add a few stories or a few jokes or something. Maybe. He said, no, that's not what I meant. It was nice, but because you were trying to give so much proof and evidence and everything about reincarnation. But I remember my previous life. So for me, it's not something that I need to listen to because I remember what I was. He must have been a man in his 50s at that time. And I was taken aback. And I said, yes, okay. He said, please tell me. So then he explained a few things he remembered. He said, when I was a child, I remembered much more. But now I've forgotten. Now, there was a gentleman in America called Ian Stevenson. Any of you heard of him? Ian Stevenson was a psychiatrist. He passed away just last year, maybe 2 years ago. He dedicated his entire life, his professional life, studying this one topic, past life memories. And he published volumes and volumes of published papers and books on this topic. And he found cases that were beyond fraud, beyond deception of any sort. He established a very strict methodology so that he could rule out fraud and deception. And he found cases of past life memories that just had to be genuine, not just in India, where people believe in reincarnation, but also amongst communities which didn't believe in reincarnation and which were staunchly opposed to it. And mostly there were cases of children who remembered their previous life. And with stark detail, they were able to recount everything they had seen in their house. And in some cases, they were able to identify the husband or wife of their previous life. And it created an awkward situation. Because with this, you can imagine the situation. The little child goes up and says, you were my wife from my previous life. And here's this lady who's like 65 years old, 70 years old or something. And little boy of 4 years old comes, yeah, she's my wife. And then, they say, how do we know she's your wife? Well, we had this jewelry she kept over there. And she had this mannerism. And there was this particular incident that she got upset about, and that happened, and this happened. She started recounting all these incidents, and everyone was struck with wonder. But that caused a problem for this child, because who am I? Am I the person from the previous life? Am I the person from this life? Who am I? So it's actually not such a good thing to be able to remember your previous life. We have enough issues in this one life as it is. We don't need to be burdened with so many other issues from, all the past lives. So in any case, there is such a thing as a past life. And there's lots of information on that. The latest information that I had is somebody told me, he gave me some newspaper clippings, is that there is a prince in Qatar. You know Qatar, in the Gulf? One of the royal family. And he is convinced that he was a king in one particular kingdom in India before this, a place called Indore. And he was so obsessed with this idea because he said he could clearly remember what he was, what he did. He spent literally millions of dollars accumulating antiques, everything connected to the royal family of Indore. And his religion doesn't believe in this, but he was unashamed to declare that this is who I was in the previous life. And it became a sensational thing, because in the Gulf we don't generally talk about these things. He did come to India, and there was a big newspaper coverage for him and so on. So, it's a law of nature. It's not a Hindu thing. The soul, the reincarnation, these are not only religious ideas. Inasmuch as gravity is not a British phenomenon because Newton discovered it, or the theory of relativity is not American or Swiss or German or whatever because Einstein discovered it. These are laws of nature. So the Bhagavad Gita is describing phenomena in nature. The soul exists, is beyond the subtle and the gross body. The subtle body exists. And when the subtle body cannot survive in this body, it moves on to another body, another life. So past life memories indicate that there is something that was not destroyed in the previous life which carried forward to the next life. Otherwise, how would there be a memory of the previous life? There is a connection, but it can't be the gross body, because the gross body was, destroyed. Either it was buried or it was cremated or whatever, but it's gone. So what survived there? The subtle body has survived. But the subtle body, also being material, is not conscious. The gross body is not conscious, the subtle body is not conscious. Then what is conscious? It's the soul. In Sanskrit it's called the Atma. The Atma is a very tiny, tiny, tiny particle of spiritual energy. And it resides in the region of the heart, according to Bhagavad Gita. It's extremely tiny. But that little tiny, infinitesimally small particle of spiritual energy is so powerful, it actually runs our whole body. It is this one tiny soul that gives life to this body. Actually speaking, this body is always dead. The gross body and the subtle body, both, are always dead. It's the soul that makes the body appear alive. Sometimes you don't have stray dogs here, but in India we have a lot of stray dogs. So sometimes when you have a car, you drive past and these dogs think there's some competitor who is coming. And they chase after the car because they think it's some enemy or something of the sort. But they can't understand that there's a human being sitting in the car who's driving the car. It's not the car really, but from the dog's point of view, the car appears to be alive. The car is not alive, it's showing the symptoms of life, apparently, because there's a living person within it who's driving it. So similarly, this body here speaks, it acts, thinks, feels, wills, etc. because of the presence of the soul within the body. When the soul leaves the body loses its capacity or ability to do all these things. It just remains as it is. Even in normal language, everyday language, we say, he has passed away. He has passed on, yes? But who has has passed away? The person's body is still lying there. So who has passed away? There's something else that was in this body, but it's not there now. That entity has passed away. And that's the soul. And the soul is carried forward to the next body by the subtle body. So the subtle body acts as a vehicle to transfer the soul from one body to the next body. And that happens under certain laws of nature. Now we won't get into that because that's another topic in itself. So that is ordained according to the laws of karma. And then the subtle body goes into another species, or maybe the same species of life according to the karma, and then the whole story starts again. And this is what causes the cycle of birth and death. Now there is an impression, even amongst many people who may believe in the soul, that the soul can only appear again in a human form or in a human body, but that's not the case. The soul can also appear in an animal body, in a plant body, in a bird's body, even as a bacterium. It all depends on the karma we've done. And then there is the movement of the soul. Now consider, for example, a tiny germ, a microbe. Remember your school biology that you learned in high school. Think of something like the amoeba or some very tiny cellular organism, unicellular organism, the simplest living form in existence. It's got cytoplasm and mitochondria, DNA, RNA, nucleus, and all of that. But it's living. When we say it's living, it means there is a soul. In that little thing, that amoeba or that bacterium, there is a soul. And that is what causes the soul, that creature, that entity to move, to reproduce, to ingest, to excrete, and so on. And compare, on the other hand, an entity like a whale, which is huge, or an elephant, which is gigantic. And what have you? You have the same soul, as tiny, as small as the one in the amoeba or the bacterium. But this one soul can power, it has the capacity to power the germ's body as well as the whale's body or the elephant's body. Isn't that amazing? Can you have a pen, a little cell of 1.5 volts that you have in your alarm clock or in your torchlight, a little tiny cell like this, or that powers your mobile phone or something? Can it power a huge city? All the electric needs, the power needs of an entire city? It's not possible, because a little battery just has this much power to light your torchlight. But here is a soul, so amazing. So the Bhagavad Gita declares the soul to be something exceptionally amazing. And this spirit soul, which powers a small entity like the germ or the big entity like a whale or an elephant, is what moves from body to body and body to body in what seems to be an interminable, endless cycle of birth and death. And this goes on and on and on and on and on. So now we have these three entities we're talking about: the gross body, the subtle body, and the spiritual soul. So where is it that we are right now? The moment we realize that I am the soul, I am not this body, I am not male or female, I am not Indian or Australian, I am not human or animal or bird, I am not rich or poor, I am just the spirit soul. Inasmuch as when you go on the roads, you'll see a variety of cars and trucks, and someone's in a bicycle, someone's in a motorcycle, someone's in a small car, someone's in a big car, someone's in a Jaguar, someone's in a truck. You have all these varieties of vehicles, and there is so much diversity there. But underlying that that diversity, there is a unity. The unity is that there are human beings driving all of these vehicles. And human beings are alike or equal in a sense. So similarly, within all the diversity that we see in the life forms in nature, there is an underlying unity. And that is that we are all souls in the ultimate analysis. We are presently in this human body. I think it was the American humorist Mark Twain who said, if I remember right, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience, but we are spiritual beings having a human experience. It's a nice one, isn't it? So we are spiritual beings who are currently in a human body. So we think I'm a human, but I'm not a human. I'm the spirit soul. So where does the soul come from? The soul is spiritual, and the gross body and the subtle body and everything we see around us is also material. But we don't belong here, because this is the material realm. This entire material creation is the material realm. But the soul belongs to another realm, the spiritual realm, the spiritual world. Different languages can call it differently. The spiritual world is just that. It's a world where everything is spiritual. There's nothing material there. What is the difference between material and spiritual? Material forms are temporary. They are destructible. They give pain, like our bodies. Yes? They give pain. Old age brings pain. Disease brings pain. One harsh word from somebody else to us brings pain. So this body, gross or subtle, is full of suffering. That's the nature of the material sphere. But in the spiritual sphere, everything is just bliss. Because the nature of the spirit soul is that it is eternal, it is full of knowledge and full of bliss. In Sanskrit, it's called Sat Chit Ananda. Eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss. So that spiritual world is called Sat Chit Ananda, is called the spiritual world. And we belong there. We don't belong here. We are refugees, so to speak. And our search for happiness is an indication of our homesickness. We are yearning for home. But our home is not here. Our home is there in the spiritual world. And because of ignorance of these sublime ideas, we carve out these territories and say, this is mine, that is mine, and you can't be here, you can't be there, and mine is better than yours. And we fight, we kill each other, cause pain to each other, and that's how the world is what it is today. But if we have realization of our spiritual identity and where we belong, and if we strive to re-establish that connection we have with that world, that spiritual world, then this whole place will become like the spiritual world. What exists in that spiritual world? Our source. Our source from whom we have come. In the Bhagavad Gita, he is called Krishna. Krishna means in Sanskrit, the all-attractive one. Nowadays, to use the word God is very risky, because people immediately get put off. The moment you say God, you say, oh no, I better go somewhere else. But call him what you may. The source of everything, the all-attractive spiritual entity with whom we have an eternal relationship of love. It is that one love affair that you've always yearned for, that eternal love affair. And all living entities, all souls should be in love with Krishna. That supremely beautiful and attractive entity who is our origin, who is our source, from whom we come, and with whom we can engage in beautiful activities of love and happiness in the spiritual world eternally. This is the goal of our life. The goal of our life is not here within this world. No matter how powerful, famous, beautiful, intelligent, wealthy we may be here, when the time comes to go, we have to go. We have to leave behind everything. So by accepting the process of self-realization, we begin to understand how futile are the material endeavors that people are engaged in this world. How insignificant and indeed even foolish are all the quarrels that we indulge in this world. How petty are all our material ambitions. And how lofty and sublime is the ultimate goal of our life. And that is what yoga is actually. People think of yoga in terms of physical exercises and breathing exercises. That's just one part or one type of yoga. But the word yoga actually comes from the Sanskrit word yuj, which means to link. So the process that links the soul to the Supreme Soul, Krishna, that is yoga. And this link is a link of love. So we link up to Krishna in love. And then the soul can unleash its true potential, its true power, which is seen, which is visible in a very reflected way. As I said, when it powers a germ, it powers an elephant, but there's just one reflected demonstration of the power of the soul. But the real power of the soul comes when it can elevate itself to that exalted state where it can live eternally in the spiritual world. That's what we are meant to be as human beings. That is the benefit of being in the human form of life, because the animals can't have discussions like we are doing now. The birds can't sit and talk like we are doing now, but humans can do it. We can question, we can understand, we can analyze, we can apply this knowledge in our life. So the understanding of the soul is very critical to human happiness. It is that one thing that can, it's like a switch. You switch it on and lights up the whole world with joy and happiness. This is what the soul can do. This is the true power. It can unleash a volcano of joy and happiness in this world, which is starved of kindness, of compassion, of love, of mutual brotherhood and sisterhood in this world. I could go on. Sometimes I say that we're like politicians, because once we get the mic, we don't stop. But I can see it's about 7:18. Is that so? 7:18. Okay. So we'll stop for some questions, if you do have any. Feel free to ask any questions, and I'll try to answer them. If it's related to the soul or anything that we've discussed this evening. I'd like to thank Kaushal. Is he here? Kaushal is here. Okay, Kaushal is wife. Thank you for hosting us this evening, for arranging this program, and for inviting me here today. And thank you for introducing me to this wonderful group of people here. And thank you, all of you as well. So yeah, the questions, if you have any, don't hesitate. Yes.
So, thank you for being here, Swami. With the karma, you know how a lot of people say karma comes back at you?
Yes.
And you were saying there's that imprint, whether it's from our past lives, etc. There's that imprint of karma. How do you fix karma? How do you balance the credit of karma from what you've done in your past life to fix it? If you can acknowledge it now that there's something that you did in your past life, how can you fix that balance?
Okay, your question is, how do you fix your past karma? Like if you have done something bad in the previous life,
Yeah.
how do you fix it?
Yeah.
Well, there's no escape, normally speaking, but to experience the fruit of that karma. We can't escape that. If I've done something bad, I will get a bad reaction in the form of some suffering or pain. So suffering or pain is nothing but the reaction to some bad activity you've done in the past, either in this life or in some previous life. If I'm experiencing some comfort, some luxury, some success, etc. in this life, it means I've done something good in some previous life. So happiness and distress, success and failure, and so on, can be understood merely in terms of being reactions to our karma. But then all of this is material. So on the material sphere, there is no counteraction there. We just experience the fruit, and that's how you extinguish that karma.
Okay.
Just like if I've committed a theft, coming back to that unfortunate example of the thief, then I'm arrested, and once I live out my sentence of whatever period, then I'm through with that crime. No one can arrest me again for the same crime. So it's extinguished. But similarly, once you suffer for a certain karma, then that karma is extinguished. But only at the gross level. But at the subtle level, that karma still exists in the form of that impression. And that impression may induce you to do it further. That's the danger of material karma. Yes, so this karma has reactions at two levels. At the gross level and at the subtle level. So by enjoying or suffering the results of a karma, we are extinguishing the gross karma. But the subtle karma still remains. And that can be extinguished and destroyed from the root only when we engage in spiritual activity, which is called akarma, by which it burns to the root all activities that connect that soul to the Supreme Soul, Krishna. They burn to the root all our karmic seeds, including the impressions that are generated there. And that's the only way. It is transcendental or spiritual knowledge that can burn up these karmic subtle and gross reactions. Okay? Yes.
By practicing yoga and meditating on a daily basis, is that bringing you closer to spiritual self?
Yes, by practicing yoga and meditation, will it bring us closer to our spiritual self? Yes, provided it's done under the proper guidance, provided we're doing the right kind of meditation or the right kind of yoga, and we're trained properly with proper knowledge. Because people will have different conceptions of what meditation is. It can be also something that, it's not something that can be whimsically decided, and I think I like to meditate in this way, or I'd like to do yoga in that way. So we have to learn from a guru, we have to learn from a teacher, and if you learn it the proper way, then yes. But often what happens is that people don't have that proper training, and therefore they do what they think is right, and that may not necessarily be so. But if we have the proper guidance, and if we do that, yes. In principle, from the school I come from, which is a school of Bhakti Yoga, which is a yoga of love. Our teachings are that connection is revived by chanting. The meditation is by meditating on the sound vibration of certain transcendental sounds. Because mental meditation alone is very difficult, especially in this age, when human ability to concentrate for even a few seconds is very difficult. How many times your mind has wandered since you sat in this lecture? I'm sure it's gone many times. You may have thought about some other thing. That's the nature of the mind. very hard to do silent meditation in this age. Very, very few rare souls may have some capacity because of some exceptional achievement in the previous life. Otherwise, it's not possible to do it. So we focus on sound vibrations, spiritual sounds. Hare Krishna, this is a sound vibration. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. These are spiritual words, and they will bring out the true potential of the soul and cleanse the heart of all the karmic impressions and the reactions, and gives rise to that original love that is dormant, that is inherent in the soul. The love of the soul for Krishna is dormant there. And by this process of sound meditation, mantra meditation, we actually invoke that comes up. And when your heart is full of that real love for Krishna, then you don't need any other artificial method of trying to be happy. Okay? Any other questions?
Just a quick update. Sorry, just quickly. There's still 15 minutes, so we have 15 minutes to dinner. So we have more questions if you have.
Okay, that's fine. Yes.
What is your view on spirits of or souls of animals? And you talked about reincarnation. We could come back as an animal. Is that what you believe, or is that what is your view on that?
Your question is whether animals have souls?
No, I know animals have souls, but are they different souls to ours?
Okay. Are the souls of animals different to our souls? No, they're not. We have had innumerable births in our previous lives, and some of them must have been animal experiences. So, you have this saying, which I've seen, been there, done that. So we can say that. Been there, done that. We've been an animal species. We've been a bird, we've been an insect, we've been a snake, we've been a tiger, we've been what have you. Because we've been in this material world for millions and trillions of births. We don't know from how long, from time immemorial. So we've had all these experiences, but we have forgotten them. They're just in the subconscious memory. Sometimes they may be invoked in a dream or something of the sort. But indeed, it's the same soul. And we've been through this journey. And now, by taking to the spiritual path, we want to ensure that we don't go over it all over again. We had some pictures, didn't we? Actually, I forgot about it. We'd like to show you a few pictures, paintings about the whole movement of the soul through the different bodies. Yeah. This is one verse from the Bhagavad Gita which goes to show how the soul moves even within this body from babyhood through boyhood to youth to old age, and then it dies. The body is destroyed, only to be born again in some other body. And this is the circle that goes on and on and on. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, that is the material body, there is no endurance. And of the eternal, that is the soul, there is no change. They have concluded this by studying the nature of both. It's the same soul that moves through these different bodies. Even in this life we change bodies, don't we? When we were born, what was our body like? What is our body like now? Is there any resemblance at all? Absolutely none. So even in this life, we have changed so many bodies. So it's not really surprising when we change body after death, because we've been doing it anyway all our life. Indeed, it will not be an exaggeration to say that you have changed your body, you would have changed your body by the time you leave this room. because many cells have died and some cells may have been regenerated. So your body has changed, although marginally, but it has changed. The next one. There's something to show you karma. How because of karma we accept different bodies. From one life, we go to the next, and the next, and the next, and the next, and the next, 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 next. We've been there, done that. Yes. This is how karma works and reincarnation works. Okay, there we are.
How long does it take the soul to leave the body once the body's died?
Actually, the departure of the soul itself is what death is.
Does that happen straight away? As soon as the animal or something's died, the soul dies straight away? It doesn't
Yeah.
take a few
No,
minutes or...
it's just instantaneous. It's instantaneous. The soul leaves. The moment the soul leaves, it may take time to leave. Just like, there's someone who has to be moved out from a room and then refuses to leave. It may take time to move out that person, but eventually the person will go. But once they leave, then that's the departure. So when a person is in coma, the soul is refusing to leave, in a comatose condition. But eventually it has to leave because the body cannot continue indefinitely. So the time the soul actually leaves, that instant, that is death. Okay? So here's another little pictorial depiction of how the soul moves through different bodies, even in this one life. The soul is the same. The sense of I-ness is the same. The child says, I am a child. The boy says, I am a boy. The young man says, I am a young man. The old man says, I am an old man. The I is the same. The sense of I-ness, the sense of identity is the same. But the body has changed. Yeah.
How do you believe a soul was created?
Sorry?
How do you believe souls are created?
Souls are never created.
How do
Souls
you
are
believe they
eternally
come into
existing.
existence?
They are eternally existing in the spiritual realm. Because spiritual substance is eternal.
Okay.
So the soul is also eternal. This is one of the fundamental points stated in the Bhagavad Gita. That the body is temporary, but the soul is eternal. It was never born, and it will never die.
So how do you believe it come into existence, though?
Yeah, that's exactly how our mind boggles, because we can't conceive of something that never had a beginning and that will never have an end. Because we are so influenced by the time factor in this world, in which things are created, maintained, and destroyed. But the spiritual realm is beyond that. So there's no question of a point in time when the soul came into existence. It always existed. So we cannot apply the concept of time as we understand it to the spiritual realm. Okay? How many more do we have? Okay, this is another pictorial description of how the soul's journey through this world. All these different species, we've moved in there. We've gone through these different species. And thankfully, we've forgotten them. Yes, next one. Again, another example of how the soul can move through different species. It's the same soul that moves. So once we were in an elephant's body, once we were in a giraffe's body, once we were in a lion's body, in a dog's body, in a monkey's body. So we've been there.
So if that's the case, I'm just curious because you got me thinking now. Yeah. Everything's got a soul. Every bacterium has a soul. the human body is made of what, 50 to 100,000 cells,
Right.
all ran by one soul. But we're also ran equally by 50 to 100 trillion bacteria that coincide with those cells. So is that now saying that we're actually walking beings with one soul working our overall being, but over 50 to 100 trillion other souls constantly moving through our body at every given point in time?
Indeed, yes. It's like,
Concept.
you know, an aeroplane where there's a pilot and there's 300 people in the vehicle, but the person flying the plane is the one who's the pilot, right? So your main soul is the you, the real you, who owns that body. So that body belongs to you, the soul.
So if all those little bacteriums are coming with, let's say, karmic issues, are we somewhat, looking after a community of troublemakers? No, that's going wrong in there. That was him.
You know, there are many bacteria that are good. You know, you can't have the digestive process without bacteria. In fact, there are times when they ask you to take what is it called? Bacteria, what is that? Probiotics or something. You take them because you need to create those good bacteria. So not all bacteria are bad. There are many that are necessary for proper functioning of the human system. So we have all these bacteria inside the body. They have their own body, but they're residing within our body. You see? And but our body is run by this one soul. And when we leave this body, then these bacteria eventually will either die or they will have to move to some other place to find some sustenance.
So yeah, good point. So the bacteria are the good ones and the parasites are the ones we're looking after.
Some bacteria are parasites, some are parasites, but some are genuinely helpful for us. And those that are helpful also may survive or they may not survive when the body dies. So it's like that. So we have, even in this one body, we have trillions of souls, not our souls. There are other souls that have occupied this body, which is our property, the soul's property.
So when the major soul of this vehicle at the moment dies,
yes.
right? All those other souls die too, and then they all go and do their own thing and maybe take a new body or have to go back into the one body with 100 trillion cells again.
Yeah, you see, it's not the souls that die. The souls never die.
No, but like
The body.
the body. So the soul goes to, say, for instance, live in another person and is the main controller of that one, but it was part of this body that I'm living in now.
Yes.
And now it's going to live in a new body, being the pilot as per se.
Yes.
And then you've got those other trillion souls that are all now working in conjunction with this new pilot. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
You see, it's something like, when the pilot touches down at the airport, then the pilot comes out of the aircraft, and then everyone else has to come out too. Right? They can't live there forever. Maybe they hang on for 15 minutes to clear up a few things, but eventually they have to leave. So a few bacteria, they are individuals in their own right, but they have occupied our body with or without our permission. They're there inside our body, right? So I am this soul who is occupying this human body. And within this human body, there are many other living entities who occupy it and make it their home. So they have made my body their home. And these little entities, these germs and these bacteria, they also have souls. So when this main body perishes, then these bacteria will either perish or they will leave through some way and try to find sustenance in some other place. Right? Okay. So that just gives you a picture. And this is the situation of reincarnation. You go out one door, come in the other door. So you've died in one life, the next life you come back. Okay, next please.
Is there a time frame between the soul leaving the dead body and then reincarnating in the new body? Is there a time frame, or does it vary for each soul?
Is there a time frame between the time the soul leaves the body and re-enters a new body?
Some people
There
believe it
is.
straight away, and some people believe that it
Yes,
could be.
there's no standard time frame. It depends a lot on the karma of the individual. It's a bit of a complicated topic which will take me a while to explain, but suffice it to say for now that it varies. But when we talk of even the shortest time frame, it's not going to happen instantly. It is going to take a certain minimum period because there is travel into other dimensions. The soul that departs from a body does travel into other places, other realms, and then it comes back. And those realms have time scales that are not like our time scales. So there are differences. It may take a few months, maybe a few years. It depends. Okay? So, the dress, the body is like a dress, Every evening we come home and we change our dress. We remove one dress and we wear another dress. So this gross body is like a dress. So the soul wears one dress, so to speak, and then gives it up and takes on another dress. So that's what's being depicted here in this picture. You can see the central picture is like a zip, someone is removing his clothes. It's like the body. It's like a set of clothes which we remove. And then we accept another set of clothes. So we give up one body, accept another body. Give up that one, accept another one. Okay, next please. Next one.
This is the last.
Last one, okay. Don't we have that cartoon? There's a little cartoon I remember which there's a little boy sitting next to his grandfather. And he says, yeah, when I was your age also, I never believed in reincarnation. You get it?
Yeah.
The little boy telling his grandfather, yeah, when I was your age, I also never believed in reincarnation. Meaning the previous life, obviously. There it is. So I'll leave it to you to meditate on this little joke and get it as you leave. So we'll halt here. Okay? Yeah, we're done. Okay. All right. Thank you very much indeed.